there comes a moment when something inside you goes quiet. It's not broken and it's not numb. It's just finished. The world might not notice it at first, but you do. For a long time, you were the one doing all the explaining your tone, explaining your intentions, explaining why something hurt you even when you felt like it shouldn't have. You searched for the right words, hoping that if you could just be clear enough, you would finally be understood. And deep down, you probably believed that being understood would fix everything. But this is where things begin to shift, because there comes a point when you realize that explaining isn't connection, it's defense, and you've been defending your inner world for far too long. If you are honest with yourself, the exhaustion didn't come from caring too much. It came from caring alone. It came from translating your feelings into simple language for people who weren't truly listening. It came from shrinking complex emotions into small sentences, hoping they would land softly. And this is the part that no one talks about. When you stop explaining, it doesn't happen with a loud announcement. There is no dramatic decision, no final argument, no big closing speech. It happens quietly, almost gently. One day you just pause before responding. You feel the familiar urge to justify yourself rise up, and then you feel it fade away. Instead of pushing the words out, you pull your energy back in. At first this feels strange. It feels unnatural. You might even feel guilty, like you are withholding something important, but what you are actually doing is listening to a deeper signal inside you. There is wisdom in this. Much of our suffering comes from living too far outside ourselves, disconnected from the quiet truths trying to surface from within. And when you stop explaining, you finally begin to hear those truths more clearly. You start to notice something unsettling. The people who truly wanted to understand you never needed long explanations in the first place, and the ones who demanded them rarely ever changed, no matter how carefully you spoke. That realization stings. It forces you to face something uncomfortable. You weren't misunderstood because you explained poorly. You were misunderstood because you were explaining to the wrong people. What happens next surprises most people. When you stop explaining, some people become uncomfortable. They are used to having access to your inner world. They are used to you smoothing over the tension. They are used to you making things easier for them emotionally. Your silence disrupts that pattern, not because it is cold, but because it is honest. There is a subtle shift that happens inside you during this time. Your awareness turns inward. You start observing instead of reacting. You listen not just to words, but to energy, to patterns, to what is left unsaid. This is where emotional detachment is often misunderstood. Detachment isn't indifference. It's clarity without self-abandonment. It's the moment you realize that not every feeling needs to be explained in order to be valid. You stop chasing resolution through words, and you begin finding it through alignment. This can feel lonely at first, because explaining was how you tried to stay connected. It was how you bridged the gap between your inner world and others. Letting go of it can feel like letting go of hope, but there's another layer to this experience. When you stop explaining, you also stop needing to be understood so badly. Your sense of self slowly detaches from outside approval. You no longer need someone else to confirm that your emotions are real. This is where a deeper strength starts to form. You become more careful with your energy, not in a defensive way, but in a respectful way. You begin to feel the difference between curiosity and intrusion, between misunderstanding and simple disinterest, between someone who wants to connect and someone who just wants to control the story. Without realizing it, you are stepping into a more complete version of yourself. You are becoming who you truly are, not who you are trained to be. Part of that process means reclaiming the parts of yourself that you always felt you had to explain away, the part that felt too much, the part that noticed small shifts, the part that sensed things before they were even spoken. When you stop explaining, those parts no longer need permission to exist. But this isn't the end of the discomfort. As you grow quieter, the world might try to pull you back into your old roles. You might be asked why you're different, why you don't talk as much, why you seem distant. Here is the quiet truth. You are not distant. You are just present with yourself. You are no longer spilling your inner world into spaces that cannot hold it. And this is where real healing begins. Not in big realizations, but in small moments of trusting yourself, in choosing not to clarify something that already feels obvious to you, in allowing silence to speak when words would only drain you, in noticing how much lighter you feel when you stop carrying the weight of being understood by everyone. A calm settles in during this stage, not happiness, not excitement, just calm. And calm can feel unfamiliar when you have lived in emotional overdrive for so long. But stay here for a moment, because what happens next changes the way you relate to everything. When you stop explaining, you start attracting different kinds of connections. Conversations shift. Relationships either deepen or they fade. Some connections fall away naturally, not because you push them away, but because they were built on access, not on respect. The ones that remain feel different. They feel easier, quieter, more mutual. You don't feel the need to prove your inner world anymore, and strangely, that is when it becomes most visible to others. At some point, the silence stops feeling like something is missing. It starts feeling like a presence, not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that holds you steady from the inside. When you stop explaining for long enough, your nervous system begins to rest. You are no longer scanning conversations for signs of misunderstanding. You are no longer preparing your clarifications in advance. You are simply there. And this is where many people realize something they never expected. They weren't tired of people. They were tired of performing emotional translation. There is a big difference. For years, you may have believed that connection required effort, that intimacy was built through careful wording, that being seen meant making yourself understandable at any cost. But this is where things change, because when you stop explaining, you begin to notice who leans in without needing instructions, who stays present without demanding full access, who listens not just to your words, but to your pauses. This awareness grows quietly. You start sensing emotional truth more clearly, not because you have become colder, but because you are no longer drowning in noise. When the conscious mind relaxes its grip, the deeper parts of you begin to communicate more honestly. In this quieter state, you recognize patterns you once ignored. You see how often explaining was a form of self-betrayal. How often you made your feelings smaller just to keep the peace. How often you carried feelings that were never yours to carry. This realization doesn't come with anger. It comes with clarity. And clarity changes how you move through the world. You stop filling silence just to be polite. You stop softening truths that don't need to be softened. You stop rushing to fix discomfort that isn't yours to fix. What happens next surprises most people. The world does not collapse when you stop explaining. People do not disappear the way you feared they would. Some step back, yes, but others step forward. And the ones who step forward feel different. They meet you where you are, not where you perform. There is deep relief in this stage, a sense of coming home to yourself. You begin to trust your own experience without needing someone else to confirm it. You no longer need anyone to agree with your feelings for them to be real. This is emotional self-respect. Not loud, not defensive. With this comes a new relationship to your past. You start seeing old moments differently. Arguments where you over-explained. Situations where you felt invisible despite all your effort. Not with shame, but with compassion. You understand now that you were doing the best you could with what you knew then. And what you know now has grown. There is a moment in this phase that is easy to miss. A quiet turning point. You realize you are no longer waiting to be understood. You are waiting to see who understands you naturally. That one shift changes everything. Your boundaries become simpler, not because you have built walls, but because you have stopped negotiating your inner truth. You don't announce your boundaries anymore. You just live them. And this is where your energy truly changes. There is less urgency, less emotional flooding, more careful judgment. You still feel deeply, but you are no longer completely open and exposed. Your empathy becomes grounded instead of draining. Part of your deeper self may have held the belief that your worth depended on being understood. Letting go of that belief isn't dramatic. It's freeing. You stop explaining not because you don't care, but because you finally do care. You care enough about yourself to protect your inner world, to let it breathe, to let it be felt before it is shared. This changes the way you experience connection. Conversations slow down. You listen more. You speak with intention. You are no longer trying to convince anyone. You are simply expressing yourself when it feels right. And people can feel that difference. They might not be able to name it, but they sense it. There is a steadiness in you now, a quiet authority, not the kind that demands respect, but the kind that naturally receives it. This is the stage where peace replaces explanation, not because everything is resolved, but because you are no longer at war with yourself. You allow others to misunderstand you if they need to. You allow silence to exist without rushing to fill it. You allow relationships to show their true depth without you forcing it. In doing this, you reclaim something precious, your energy. You begin to feel less broken into pieces, more whole, more present. You are no longer split between how you feel and how you explain. They become one thing, and that unity is powerful. As this settles, you may notice a gentle confidence growing, not confidence in being right, confidence in being real. You trust your inner signals. You honor your emotional rhythms. You move at your own pace. This is not withdrawal from the world. It is participation on your own terms. Here is the final truth. When someone who feels deeply stops explaining, they do not lose their voice, they refine it. They learn that not every truth needs an audience. Not every feeling needs translation. Not every silence needs to be broken. Some things are meant to be felt, not justified. In that realization, something settles deep inside you, a sense of peace that doesn't ask for permission, a strength that doesn't announce itself, a self-respect that no longer needs words. You haven't become distant, you have become centered. And from that center, everything begins to make sense.